After stunning video of Lil Mendeecees publicly smacking his own father, Mendeecees Harris, went viral, the internet went crazy. Fans are stunned and wonder what could have led to such a violent altercation between a father and son. Was there anything much more serious simmering between the two, or was this just an outburst of anger? When Mendeecees and Lil Mendeecees were seen fighting angrily inside a fancy car, witnesses said that things quickly got out of hand. It appeared to be just another father-son argument at first, but things quickly got out of hand. According to sources, accusations were made, voices were raised, and then smack. When Lil Mendeecees' palm flew across his father's face, Mendeecees was rendered speechless. Fans are frantically looking for the leaked video that has everyone talking after it was claimed that the entire incident was captured on camera. What might have caused Lil Mendeecees to act in such a way? Is there an unspoken family secret underlying this startling incident, or did Mendeecees push his son too far? We're going to reveal every crazy aspect of this incredible father-son conflict, so stay tuned. One could feel the tension in the opulent vehicle, which was thick enough to sever with a knife. Mendeecees Harris sat in the driver's seat, his knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel a bit too firmly. Beside him, Lil Mendeecees sat with his eyes flaming with rage and his teeth tightened. Within minutes, the air inside the car had changed, becoming heavy with bitterness, old wounds, and unresolved rage. It had begun as a casual talk, perhaps even an attempt at bonding. Lil Mendeecees shook his head and murmured, "Man, you never listen." Despite his controlled and low voice, there was a noticeable hint of irritation in it. "You don't know what's best for me, even though you always act like you do. You haven't." Mendeecees sighed deeply as his fingers gripped the steering wheel more tightly. With a voice that was equally low but tinged with the weariness of years of trying, he shot out, "That's not fair. I've been making an effort to treat you well. Do you believe this to be simple? Being a father, particularly in light of all that we have experienced." Lil Mendeecees turned to look out the passenger window and scoffed. His thoughts were somewhere far in the past, recalling all the times he had felt like an afterthought in his father's life, even as the city lights flickered past them. He had needed direction at times, but he had been ignored. The years he spent on the sidelines as his father established a life with Yandy and their children, leaving him to fend for himself. His voice became harder as he replied, "Don't even start with that, man. Where were you when I needed you, even though you brag about being a father? When I was working things out on my own, where were you? When you weren't around and I had to be my own man." Mendeecees took a deep breath, feeling the weight of unsaid sorrows rise and fall in his chest. He was aware that his son was perfectly entitled to feel the emotions he felt. He was aware that he had made serious blunders. He had attempted to make amends, though. Had he not? With a softer, almost beseeching tone, he stated, "I was doing what I had to do. I was taking care of business, ensuring you had what you required. Don't pretend as though I didn't care, even though I might not have been there as I should have been." With a frown on his face and quick, controlled breaths, Lil Mendeecees turned back to his father. "That's what you always say," he whispered. "However, when your words and deeds are inconsistent, they are meaningless. You think I'll just, what? Ignore everything? Act as though nothing is wrong?" Mendeecees wiped his face after exhaling. "No," he acknowledged. "I don't think you'll forget. But really, shouldn't we at least make an effort to proceed?" There was silence for a moment. Only the faint murmur of the city outside and the buzzing sound of the car's engine beneath them. However, that quiet was actually the quiet before the storm, not serenity. Lil Mendeecees laughed, but not in a playful way. It was hollow and bitter. "Go ahead." He shook his head and repeated, "How, dude? You don't even accept responsibility, so how do you expect me to do that? When you sit here and act as though I should take your word for it." Mendeecees' patience was running thin as he tilted his head slightly. "You don't believe that I've accepted accountability?" His voice tightened with fury as he asked. "You don't think I've made an effort to make things better?" Lil Mendeecees gazed at him with dark, resentful eyes. "Are you aware of your issue?" His voice was dangerously low as he spoke. "You believe that everything from the past is erased just because you've performed better recently. However, it doesn't. Even if you're not, I'm still dealing with that asterisk. Mendeecees' jaw. Within minutes, the tone of the talk had changed from tense to volatile. He was aware of his son's pain. He was right to be upset, he knew. However, he was taken aback by the way Lil Mendeecees spoke, as though all of his hard work had been in vain. Mendeecees shook his head and mumbled, "You don't get it." With his eyes burning with annoyance, Lil Mendeecees leaned forward a little. "No," he yelled, his voice suddenly rising. "You're not getting it." At that point, it occurred. The tipping point. Mendeecees rolled his eyes and scoffed, dismissing his son's suffering with a single motion. Little Mendeecees' hand suddenly exploded out of his hand before he could even comprehend what was happening. Smack! The slap reverberated throughout the vehicle. Whatever restraint remained between them was broken by a sudden, harsh crack. Mendeecees' cheek burned from the contact as his head wrenched to the side. His eyes expanded in sheer shock, not in pain. With long, irregular breaths, Lil Mendeecees sat back, his chest rising and falling. His own face was locked in a mixture of amazement and rage, and his hands were still shaking. He had succeeded. Yes, he had done it. They were silent for a moment. Like a black cloud, the weight of what had just transpired hovered in the air. Mendeecees' jaw tensed as he slowly turned back. There was an unmistakable fire in his eyes, yet his breathing was controlled. "What on earth did you do just now?" His voice was dangerously low as he asked. With his heart racing, Lil Mendeecees gulped forcefully. He had acted out of gut and unadulterated passion, and for the first time, he had no idea what was going to happen. The moment was excruciatingly prolonged, and the air was so tense that it was oppressive. The burning in Mendeecees' cheek persisted, but it was a deeper ache that went beyond his bodily discomfort and pierced his parental authority and pride. This was not what he had anticipated. Not from his own son. As he comprehended what he had just done, Lil Mendeecees' hands continued to shake a little, and his breathing was irregular. He had no idea why he had been slapped. Angry? Angry? The culmination of years of suppressed anger in a single, uncensored moment. Mendeecees turned his entire body towards his son and let out a sharp exhale through his nose. His jaw tightened. Something unidentifiable, hurt, betrayal, something darker, was burning in his eyes. His voice was unnaturally calm as he said, "You just put your hands on me." With a forceful swallow, Lil Mendeecees' chest rose and fell quickly. He began to say, "I," but stopped short. Even so, what could he say? "I didn't mean it." An untruth would be that. Because he did mean it at that moment. Mendeecees shook his head and laughed bitterly. "You feel that way, don't you?" he whispered. "You dislike me that much?" Little Mendeecees' gut twisted. Hatred? Did his father believe this to be the case? Did he not despise him? His voice was raw with passion as he stated, "This isn't about hate. This has to do with the fact that you never pay attention and never get my perspective." Mendeecees chuckled. With a sharper tone now, he yelled back, "Oh, I understand just fine. Now that I've worked so hard to be there for you, this is what I get." His expression contorted in shock, he pointed to his still stinging cheek. "Do I deserve this respect?" Lil Mendeecees felt a wave of frustration wash over him once more, and his nostrils flared. He yelled, "Dude, stop acting like you're some saint. You talk about being there for me now, but when I most needed it, where was all this fatherly concern?" Mendeecees lost patience and smashed his palm against the dashboard. "You behave as though I had a terrible option," he yelled, his voice trembling with unmistakable annoyance. "As if I desired to be imprisoned. Like I wished I could go back in time. Do you really believe that I didn't spend the night contemplating what I was missing? Considering you?" Despite feeling his throat constrict, Lil Mendeecees chose not to show it. He resisted his father's attempts to turn this into a sobbing, guilt-ridden tale. "It wasn't enough to think about me," he stated icily, "because you weren't truly here when you eventually returned." Mendeecees' breath caught for a moment as he blinked. It struck deep. The words sat heavy and oppressive between them. There had been a lot of shouting in the car, but now it was oddly quiet. Then, without warning, Mendeecees flung open the automobile door. As Lil Mendeecees watched his father leave the house with his hands clenched at his sides, his eyes widened a little. His face was harshly lit by the streetlights overhead, which accentuated the hurt and rage on his face. After a brief moment of hesitation, Lil Mendeecees pushed open his own door and emerged. He had no intention of giving up. "Not right now. Are you leaving now?" he yelled, his tone brimming with irony. "That's really grown up." Mendeecees' countenance was nearly unreadable as he spun around so quickly. "Do you wish to behave like an adult?" His voice was deadly calm as he spoke. Then act like one towards me. Lil Mendeecees' heart was racing. The remarks felt like a challenge even though he understood his father wasn't referring to a real fight. They were two men, face to face, with years of hidden hurt and animosity ready to pull up again. In that moment, they were more than just father and son. With only the occasional passing automobile in the distance, the street surrounding them seemed strangely quiet. However, they were the only thing present in this instant, within this emotional maelstrom. A sluggish breath left Mendeecees' mouth, and his face softened somewhat. He said, "Look, you don't understand everything, and maybe that's on me." Lil Mendeecees sneered, "But don't think for a second that you have the right to touch me." "Yes. What are you going to do about it?" Mendeecees' jaw tightened once more, but this time he refused to fall for the ruse. As an alternative, he moved forward, getting close enough for Lil Mendeecees to sense the tension coming from him. Mendeecees remarked in a quiet, controlled voice that was full with meaning, "I don't have to do anything. You've already harmed yourself." Something changed in Lil Mendeecees' chest. Although the remarks didn't seem menacing, they somehow had a greater impact than any smack could. Mendeecees took a small step back and shook his head. "You want to pretend that you've matured? All right. Allow me to tell you something, though. True guys don't allow their feelings dictate their decisions." With his breathing still erratic, Lil Mendeecees gazed at him. Then, without saying anything more, Mendeecees turned and left. Lil Mendeecees watched in silence as his father vanished into the street's darkness, and he wasn't certain if he had won or lost for the first time since the combat began. With his fists still clenched at his sides and his breathing irregular, Lil Mendeecees remained there. He watched as his father left, vanishing into the dark streets. He hardly sensed the frigid air biting his skin. His chest felt constricted by feelings he was unable to identify, and his mind was racing. Was this it? Was this the point at which their tenuous relationship ultimately broke down? He took out his phone with trembling hands, his thumb hesitating over the screen. His mother, a friend, or anyone else who could reassure him that he hadn't just made the worst decision of his life was the person he wanted to call. But his phone buzzed before he could take any action. An alert, Instagram. When he saw what it was, his heart fell. A film. The film, the altercation had been captured on camera. The slap. The instant Mendeecees left. It was already gaining popularity. The stomach of Lil Mendeecees twisted. As soon as the video loaded, he tapped the notification and noticed the influx of comments. Is it true that Lil Mendeecees slapped his own father? This is insane. Mendeecees didn't deserve that. Yeah, I understand his motivation. That man was a deadbeat. The family is really embarrassed by this. Mendeecees left like a true man, but Lil Mendeecees still has a lot to learn. He was powerless to halt the comments, which arrived in ever faster waves. His heart thumped. He hadn't even considered the possibility that someone was photographing them because they were in public. The world was now aware. As he scrolled, Lil Mendeecees' jaw tensed. His father had yet to publish anything. No statement, no answer, nothing. But he anticipated it. Mendeecees wasn't the kind to overlook anything, particularly something this significant. Panic began to set in. What had he done? For a few moments, his fingers lingered over the delete app button, but he knew it would have no effect. Already, the internet had taken over. There was a call this time, and his phone buzzed once again. His mom. He took a deep breath before responding. Mom, what on earth did you do? Yandy's voice was a sharp blow. It was more than just rage, it was also a great deal of disappointment, incredulity, and exasperation. Lil Mendeecees wiped his face. It's not what it looks like, Mom. I don't care what it looks like, she said. Are you aware of what you just did? This is more than just a disagreement between you and your father. It's a mess in public. Everyone is discussing it. People are bombarding my phone with messages like, I need to explain what's going on between you and your father. After TMZ had reached out for a statement and the Shade Room posted it. Lil Mendeecees' throat constricted. He hadn't considered that. The press, the blogs of gossip. His mother is being drawn into the situation. Mom, he began, his voice now down. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Did you not intend to? Yandy laughed without humor. You believe that improves it. Your hands just touched your father, baby. In the open, the entire globe witnessed it. What will this do to him, do you know? Lil Mendeecees winced in response to the inquiry. What would it do to him? Would his father's reputation suffer as a result? Would it permanently destroy their relationship? Yandy let out a long sigh. She sounded tired, but more than that, she was upset. She said, "You need to fix this," in a firmer yet softer tone. "You are going to solve this regardless of how angry you are or what you were fighting about. For this reason, we don't deal with things like this." Lil Mendeecees was quiet for a while. Though it was beginning to crumble, his pride remained. "I'll speak with him," he said at last. Yandy sighed deeply once more. "I hope so, because now, the entire globe is observing. Your father is too, I'm sure of it." Before he could finish speaking, she hung up. Lil Mendeecees let out a trembling breath, his thoughts racing. He had to speak with his dad. However, where was he? Then, almost simultaneously, his phone buzzed once again. An SMS from Mendeecees. "Come to the studio with me, right now." Lil Mendeecees' heartbeat quickened. He had no idea what to anticipate, but one thing was certain, this was far from over. When Lil Mendeecees arrived, the studio was silent. Too silent. With his countenance unreadable, his father was already seated on the black leather couch. There was tension in the air between them. Lil Mendeecees paused at the entrance hall. He briefly contemplated turning around and walking away. However, he was aware that was not an option. Shutting the door behind him, he entered. At first, Mendeecees didn't look up. He was likely viewing the same posts and comments that Lil Mendeecees had previously viewed when he browsed through his phone. After what seemed like an age, he finally put the phone down and let out a breath. "So, where are we at this point?" His voice was thick but calm as he spoke. "Are we fighting on the streets as if we have no home training?" Lil Mendeecees turned up his nose. He started to reply, but his father wasn't finished yet. With a stronger tone, Mendeecees went on, "You embarrassed me. You caused this family embarrassment. Do you believe that's what it means to be a man?" Lil Mendeecees' mouth clenched. "Dude, don't discuss being a man with me while you—" "No." Mendeecees interrupted him. "You are not allowed to speak at this time. You will pay attention." Lil Mendeecees stopped talking. Mendeecees lowered his voice and shook his head. He was hurt, not just angry. He acknowledged that he had made mistakes in the past. "I admit that I wasn't always present. However, you must realize that I had to do what I had to do. I'm not flawless, but what did I do? For this family, I did." Lil Mendeecees took a deep breath. His father's speech was unlike anything he had ever heard. "You believe you became a man by smacking me?" Mendeecees inquired. "No, taking responsibility for your errors. You are a man because of that." Lil Mendeecees' gut twisted. Did he make a mistake by owning this? Between them, there was stillness. Finally, he let out a breath. His voice was hardly audible above a whisper as he confessed, "I made a mistake." Mendeecees gave a nod. "Indeed, you did." One more pause. "But I'm not flawless either," his father continued. "And perhaps, possibly, we both have some issues that need to be resolved." For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, Lil Mendeecees looked up and met his father's eyes. Perhaps there was yet hope. This might not have been the end. The world, however, continued to observe. What about the fallout was only getting started. No disagreement they had ever had seemed as heavy as the quiet between them. Lil Mendeecees and his father were not arguing or accusing one another for the first time in years. All they could do was stare, think, and realize. The silence was finally broken by Mendeecees. "The worst thing about all of this, do you know?" His voice was lower now, but it still had a hint of disappointment in it. "It has nothing to do with what you did. It concerns how the outside world is observing us, passing judgment on us, and using this as amusement." Lil Mendeecees rubbed his hands over his face and let out a quick exhale. "You think I wanted this, man? I had no idea that someone was filming, and I didn't intend for it to become widely popular." "That's not the point," Mendeecees cut in, shaking his head. "Everything we do in this world is scrutinized closely. You believe you can move like any other man? My name is on you. People are familiar with you. The luxury of making mistakes in private is not available to you." The truth of his father's comments hit Lil Mendeecees like a kick to the stomach, causing him to swallow hard. His father rested his elbows on his knees as he leaned forward. "Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm not guilty. I may have erred more than my fair share of times. However, you have an opportunity to perform better. Don't discard that simply because you're upset with me. Lil Mendeecees tightened his jaw. It's more than just being angry. Respect is at issue. You believe that you automatically get it because you're my dad. Mendeecees' eyes narrowed. Respect is reciprocal. You publicly smacked me and left like I didn't exist. As if I weren't the man who brought you up. Lil Mendeecees felt sick to his stomach. The fury that had been brewing inside of him for so long made him want to fight back, to dispute, to hang on to it. Now, though, it felt like smoke now, all that fire. They both turned as there was a forceful knock on the door of the studio. Mendeecees scowled. Are you expecting someone? Lil Mendeecees gave a head shake. No. Mendeecees got to his feet and went to open the door. Yandy was the one. She was also furious. Her lips were squeezed into a tight line as her eyes raced between them. Immediately, the room's intensity changed. Are you guys serious now? She stepped inside and demanded. I can't go anywhere without being stopped and questioned about this video. Are you aware of how disorganized this is? Mendeecees let out a sigh. We're handling it, Yandy. Handling it? She crossed her arms and snapped. Oh, so managing it entails letting the blogs go wild and allowing everyone to depict what transpired in their own way. Handling it entails allowing your son to appear like a mischievous child while you act like a helpless father who simply left after getting slapped. Little Mendeecees shuffled uneasily. Mom, No. Don't mom me, Yandy interrupted, her tone piercing. You both made a mistake. And you're mistaken if you believe that sitting in this studio and moving back and forth will make anything better. You had to say something. Mendeecees and Lil Mendeecees looked at each other. A declaration. Mendeecees said it again. Do you mean a video apology? Yandy looked at him. You think I give a damn about what you guys post online? I'm referring to actually solving this. I don't care if the cameras are rolling or not. This family is done if you can't work this out. Lil Mendeecees' chest constricted. Completed? That was the first time he had heard his mother say it. Mendeecees' face grew serious. Doesn't anyone say we're done? However, Yandy, this isn't something that can be resolved quickly. This is more than simply a PR issue. This is true. Yandy squeezed the bridge of her nose as she breathed, perhaps to control her temper. Look, I don't give a damn about how long it takes. However, you two must get your act together. You're behaving as though you don't care about how this looks or that you don't love each other. Little Mendeecees' throat constricted. He was concerned. However, how was he to make things better? He reflected on the years of accumulated animosity that had brought them to that point, the slap, and the fight in the car. That fight wasn't the only thing at stake. Everything was at stake. He let out a sigh. So, what should we do? Yandy's eyes softened somewhat. You speak, talk a lot. This is a business deal and not in a studio. You sit down, have a face-to-face conversation, and decide how in the heck to proceed. Mendeecees exhaled deeply and ran a hand over his head. All right. However, we will accomplish it correctly if we do this. No cameras, no social media, only us. Lil Mendeecees gave a gentle nod. Yes, all right. After examining them both, Yandy at last let her arms drop. All right. However, her phone buzzed before she could continue. Her face stiffened instantly as she looked down at it. Lil Mendeecees scowled at it. What is it? Yandy's eyes raised, her expression displaying concern. Slowly, she said, it's TMZ. Something else was just leaked by them. Mendeecees tensed up. What was leaked? After hesitating, Yandy flipped her phone so they could see the screen. Lil Mendeecees' blood ran cold upon seeing it. The video was brand new. It was one they had never seen before. The caption? Mendeecees' retaliation. Startling new video reveals what occurred after the slap. Little Mendeecees' heart fell. What on earth was this? He tapped the video and grabbed the phone. As soon as it began to play, he became ill, while his father was involved. In the street, standing, conversing with someone. Additionally, he was speaking with an LAPD officer. Mendeecees' face became stern. Lil Mendeecees felt sick to his stomach. Had his father reported him to the police? No, that isn't possible. That was not feasible. Correct? Hands shaking, he turned to Mendeecees. What the devil is this, Dad? Mendeecees' eyes were fixed on the screen as his jaw tensed. He wasn't responding. Once more, Yandy's phone buzzed. One more update. From the Shade Room, this time. King. Following Lil Mendeecees' widely shared incident with his father, sources confirm police involvement. Details are still being worked out. The room spun and Lil Mendeecees felt it. He spoke in a raspy voice. "Tell me this isn't what I believe it to be, Dad." Still, Mendeecees remained silent. And that quiet was more audible than anything he could have said, since the harm has already been done. And this was just the start. Then all of a sudden, everything is different. With the entire world watching, what began as a furious quarrel in a car has now descended into a full-blown family crisis. Lil Mendeecees was already at odds with his father, but now, this problem just got 10 times worse with the release of this additional footage and the potential for police intervention. Therefore, we must ask, what do you believe actually occurred? Is this video being taken out of context, or did Mendeecees really call the police on his own son? Is there more to the narrative than what we currently understand? Most importantly, is there any chance that their relationship will ever get better? This is a conversation that no one anticipated, so please share your ideas in the comments section below. And believe me, this drama is far from over, so you won't want to miss what comes next. The next update on this scenario will be even more crazy, so be sure to press the subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on all alerts. It is not something you want to miss. This is just the beginning of the narrative, so stay tuned.